And at some point, one of those partners met someone with whom they could live a love story that was higher on their hierarchy. So suddenly what they had and what was good enough up until then wasn't enough anymore, because now they had the opportunity to realize a love story that was higher on their hierarchy.
You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Welcome back, everyone, to the No Labels, No Limits podcast, dedicated to breaking through boundaries and embracing possibilities. I'm your host, Sarah Box. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Karin Sternberg, a psychologist with a unique twist on human relationships and personal growth. As the director of the Sternberg Center for Successful Relationships and a lecturer at Cornell University's Department of Psychology, Karin blends a rigorous scientific research with innovative real-world applications. Always good to know where those two things kind of come together. Her work, including her collaborative research with dolphins and her profound insights into human connections, not only enlightens us, but also empowers individuals to thrive in their interpersonal relationships. So join me as we dive into the dynamics of love, collaboration, personal transformation with Dr. Karin Sternberg. Hey, Karin, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
I've been looking forward to this, when I read your bio and got a little more info, and, you have this diverse background in therapy and martial arts, and then you've done this work with dolphins, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this gal is pretty special. So I'm wondering if you could first maybe start with a little bit of your background and how you came to this work. And just let's start with that part, because I've got other questions for you.
Yes. So it actually it took a little bit of a detour, because right out of high school, I decided to go into banking, and I got an MBA first. And then while I was studying, I thought, okay, this is not really what I want to do and how I want to spend my life, and decided on psychology. I was almost done with the MBA, so I decided, okay, you never know, maybe psychology is a bad idea after all. So I'll finish my MBA, and then I'll see how I like psychology. But it was absolutely the right decision. So when I was done with my MBA, I started in psychology, and I have loved it ever since. And what makes psychology so special to me is that it's so highly applicable. Really, all I do, and you said, I've done a lot of diverse things. What puts the red thread in for me is that anything I'm doing puts the research into practice to help people live better lives. And that is just something that fulfills me every single day.
How great, number one, you realized that your direction you were going with your MBA wasn't where you ultimately wanted to end up.
Yes.
You covered the bases just in case you might have to fall back on it. So let's talk a little bit about just your background, especially with the dolphins. I think that's particularly of interest. And then the martial arts, because there's a whole philosophy behind the martial arts as well. So are those two interlinked at all, or how do they play into how you approach your relationship counseling or any of your other work?
So the dolphins, how that came about is I love children, and I enjoy working with children. Now professionally, I work with adults, but I've always been interested. I've also in clubs and associations, I've worked with children as a coach or a teacher and whatever. So I've done that. And especially in my earlier years, as I was studying and exploring the field, and I do have a specialization in clinical psychology, I was interested in the effect that animals have on humans, and in this case, on children, because anybody who has pets really knows that you create a special connection with them when you're sad or upset, and you can talk with the animal or you can snuggle up with it. It just has some kind of a calming effect. And so I was very interested in how that would work and wanted to explore that further. And so I went to Southern Florida, to Key Largo, for a few months and worked at an organization that does dolphin therapy. And the children there were mostly, we had severely disabled children there, and we also had some wish kids there, meaning they were terminally ill children whose wish was that they could swim with a dolphin. And so it was wonderful because we did therapy with the children in a classroom, and we also did therapy with them in the water. So it was two different components, and the work in the water with the dolphin, obviously, that was very motivating to the children. Plus, a lot of children that were disabled, they had stiff muscles and had, trouble controlling their movements and so on. And so the warm water also helped them relax. So you had that relaxing effect of the water together with the motivating effect of the dolphins. And then on top of that, you used, some clinical approaches to work really with them to make progress. And I really have to say it was a lovely combination, and the whole family often was there. So families of children that are very challenged often don't get to take a vacation because it's so hard. And so for them all to get out together and to be integrated was just really great. So I really loved that.
Let me ask about that, because I think about, as you're describing them getting some classroom time and then being in the water and the warmth of the water. But I also think there's something like, if you've been injured and you can't move yourself very well, the lightness of or the buoyancy rather of being in water is so magical. It's so freeing, right? Because the gravity is not pulling you down. And I would imagine that, along with the dolphins, would just feel so liberating.
Yes, absolutely. So it was really, you could see a change in the children when they interacted with the animals, when they were in the water. So it was really, it was very impressive. And it was kind of like magical to see that.
And I'm just going to pull on this thread a little longer because I'm curious. I've talked with folks who do equine therapy.
Yes.
That the horses adapt to the child. Like, they might be one way with one person and then someone else comes, but they need something different, and the horse knows. So how they know, I don't know, but I think horses are kind of magical. Mm-hmm. So did the dolphins pick, or like, how did they know to interact with the kids, and like, do they have a similar sensing around the kids?
Absolutely. So yes, so we saw the same thing with the dolphins. So the dolphins knew exactly how handicapped a child was and how to treat the children in the water. So with children that were severely handicapped, they were really extremely gentle and a bit, more outgoing or wilder or swam around faster with children who could handle more. So the animals really pick up on the humans they interact with. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I just think that's probably around us more than we pay attention to, and so did you end up doing more when you got back home? You left and went back up north where there isn't the warm water necessarily. Did you continue doing any animal therapy with kids?
No, I actually did not. So at the time, I was still living, I am from Germany. So I actually went back to Germany. So no warm water, no dolphins, nothing. So I continued to work with children and yes, and also did some educational work. So I worked in a project that worked with children who had severe migraines and work with them, like how to deal with their headaches. And I also worked with children who were lagging behind in school to help them catch up with their classmates. So that's what I did once I was back in Heidelberg. But
so you worked with a range of kids and ages, right?
Yes, Yes, I've worked with pretty much, yeah, the whole range from little kids to with my work on love, people in their 90s.
Which are just big people or older people with little kids inside.
Yeah, yeah, it's the whole range of humanity. You know, we're all human. So, yeah, and it's all enjoyable and, so inspiring really to
Well,
work
let's
with.
dig into your work on relationships and love and stuff because I think we all need that. Um, you know, I was on a group call today, and this one woman came. She goes, "I'm so stressed. I'm so stressed," and I'm thinking, okay, did I miss something? But she's just stressed. The
Yeah,
environment's stressful to her. I appreciate that it is. Um, but I also thought, wow, but relationships can help so much if we are in supportive relationships, so you don't feel isolated, right?
yeah.
So talk a little bit about that work that you do and what you've noticed from folks that you've worked with, like what transformations are you seeing?
So I totally agree with you. First of all, that really relationships are so important because they can make our life so much better and so much easier. But really, nothing is worse than having a bad relationship because it affects you on all levels. So it's really relationships have such a big impact on us. And I can tell you a bit more about my work in a minute, but since you asked what have I noticed, I really want to tell you and all of your listeners that I believe that everybody, no matter their history or their experiences, can create a happy and a stable relationship. That's what I've seen in my work. And a lot of people come to me and they're really desperate. And, like they say, look just at my family. My parents weren't even happy or they got divorced. And I had a string of relationships that didn't work out. I am probably just doomed. Relationships are not for me. And I am here to tell you that this is not the case, that nobody is really a lost case and everybody can create a happy relationship. It might take some work. And that's also where I come in. I can help, create those happy relationships. But I truly believe in everybody. And that is what I've really learned over the past years in working with all these inspiring people.
Well, let's talk about your work because I really think that's the heart of the issue.
Yeah.
Right? What are you doing at the Sternberg Center, and what's your work?
So the Sternberg Center came out of the work that was started by my husband, who's a psychologist as well, and had a theory of love that he tested empirically. And we had then when that work even started before he met me. And as we got married and collaborated, we had people coming to us all the time say, hey, I read your books. I heard about, your work. Can you give us advice? And I said, yes, like I'm so into the application of psychology and theories anyway. This is what I really want to do. So I said, yeah, let's create a center around that so we can help people. And so here is the core of our work. So first of all relationships that you have are kind of made up of three core components. And I'm not only talking about intimate, like romantic relationships, but really all relationships with your parents, with your kids, with friends. And these three core components are intimacy, passion, and commitment. So intimacy is something like you trust that person. You can come to them. They'll take care of you. They ask, oh, you look stressed, like kind of these things. Then passion it can be sexual, but it also can be totally non-sexual. So it's more about like, do you think about the person all the time? Do you feel like you couldn't live without that person? So when you think about parents and their love for their children, they're very passionate. So, and then of course, the last component that we have is commitment, which means do I commit to that relationship or do I not commit? And so depending on how much of each component you have a different kind of relationship. So even if you have two subsequent romantic relationships, they may differ in quality because you have different amounts of intimacy, passion, and the commitment. And there's really no one amount of any of those components that's perfect or that's best. It really is what you need. Because when you think about, say, a college student, they may not want a lot of commitment. So a relationship without commitment may be great for them. Other people may be hesitant, at least in the beginning, to share a lot about themselves. Maybe they've been traumatized or, so they may not want that much intimacy in the beginning. So it really depends. But what makes you happy in a relationship is if you have what you need or what you wish for. So that is the first part of our work. And so then we began to ask, well, where does this need or this desire for intimacy, passion, commitment come from at all? And here's where I think it gets really interesting. It comes from our love stories. And when I talk about love stories, I talk about the conceptions that each and every one of us has about relationships, about how relationships work, about what your partner should be like, how you should behave, how you interpret the actions of your partner. Imagine you are really busy and you're asking your partner, hey, on your way home from work, could you just please pick up some things from the supermarket? And then the partner comes home, didn't bring a thing. So the situation by itself doesn't mean a thing, but you then attach meaning to it. Do you get really upset and say, oh, like you just don't care. You never do anything for me. Or do you get concerned and say, hey, what's going on? Like, this is not like you. Did you have a bad day? Are you stressed or whatever? So it's really all those different things. Or like, how do you react to conflict? Is conflict threatening or not? And so those love stories we build throughout our lives, beginning when we are very little, because we see our parents and our caregivers. We build relationships with them. We see what they're doing. We see how they're interacting. We see other people's relationships. We create our own relationships. We watch movies. We read books. And so we create those love stories for ourselves that kind of like dictate what we think a relationship should be like. And the thing is, we are not aware of our love story. So it's something that is unconscious. So it creates almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy because you work towards a certain end. You're working towards creating whatever relationship you have in mind, but you're not even aware of it. And that's where relationship trouble comes in. If you have some dysfunctional ideas or beliefs that might even at some point in your past have served you well, but as an adult don't anymore, then you'll always look for the same partner who's not really good for you, or you'll have the same issues across relationships or issues you can't solve in that one relationship you're in. And that is where the love stories are really important.
Well, and it's not just one person's love stories, it's the other person in the relationship too. So, if those are out of whack or they're like not based on what's actually happening, you've got two sets of stories going on in two different people. And it can feel jarring,
That is, yeah, it's so perceptive of you to say that because I hadn't actually mentioned that yet, but yes. So essentially in a happy relationship, you need love stories that are kind of compatible. So if you have, say, some kind of a business story where you think that a relationship is mostly about, you and your partner ensuring there's enough income, you want everything organized, you want everything running well, then what may not matter to you so much is, for example, the passion in that relationship, because you have other, like your focus is just somewhere else. It's not a good or a bad thing. It is what it is. But if your partner has a love story, more like a romantic love story of a prince and a princess, and he really wants to be, like this savior and wants to have a very romantic relationship and take out his wife, who really is just exhausted all the time from all the organizing and taking care of the kids, that's where issues really come in. And so, yes, the love stories do make a difference, and they determine whether a relationship works or doesn't work. And then if you don't know about your love story, then it's really tough.
Do our love stories change over time? Our expectations, our love stories, or do they pretty much, especially the ones we're not aware of, but which is a hard thing to know the answer to, but have you noticed that people shift their love stories to be more current with who they actually are and how they're showing up?
Yes. So first of all, love stories can be changed. And I can tell you more about that later, because especially when we have some dysfunctional parts in there, which is what I then call love traps, that keep steering people off course. You can work on that. But interestingly, what we've also found is that people don't really only have one love story, but they have a hierarchy of stories. And so think about the couple that you always thought, oh, they seem to be so happy and they have everything they could want. And at some point, one of the couple leaves and gets together with someone else. And you want to they had everything. They seemed so happy. What was going on? And that is because they kind of lived one love story. And at some point, one of those partners met someone with whom they could live a love story that was higher on their hierarchy. So suddenly what they had and what was good enough up until then wasn't enough anymore, because now they had the opportunity to realize a love story that was higher on their hierarchy. And so that is how they then, ended up divorcing, breaking up, although they seemed so happy together, and they might have well been happy.
That's interesting. That actually totally describes, a relation. This was like 20 years ago, but we were all just scratching our heads going, what just happened?
Yes.
This was like within a month's time, we're going, what just well, it didn't just happen, right? Nothing just happens. But those of us on the outside, it was like that. So if our love stories don't change, but you're helping, so say I'm coming to you and maybe my partner, my husband's with me. Are you working with one person or two?
I can work with one or with two people.
Okay.
I mean, I overall think it's always much more helpful when two partners are on board and they're very supportive of each other. But, I have worked with people in situations where there's just one partner who really has an interest in changing the relationship and the other partner isn't interested. But there's still, so the person who's coming to me is still very committed to the relationship. And that can be for different reasons. It might be that they have young children, and for that reason, they want to stay together. Or there may be other reasons. So it's always, you can't ever really tell a person, okay, you should do this or that. Everybody's got their own reasons and their own motivations. And so I think while it's better if two people are working together, and just look at your everyday life and you'll see that if you change your behavior, what you get back from people also changes. So, it's a different dynamic then, but anything I think we can do to create a happier relationship and a happier life is worthwhile.
I agree. You brought up love traps. What are the common love? I'm talking about zero in. What are common love traps?
So to start a little bit like early years, I talked about love stories. And so love stories sometimes have dysfunctional elements and beliefs. Because remember that a love story is a conception of everything that comes with relationships. But sometimes we have beliefs about ourselves or about relationships that are dysfunctional. And they often come from childhood when something didn't go so well and we had to adapt. So, for example, we had a mother or a father, or maybe it was a sibling who was very sick. And so we as a child already needed to take over a lot of caretaking work in the family to keep the family running because everything, revolved around that sick family member. Or we had absent or neglectful parents or just anything, people have so many different experiences, but this is kind of like what shapes our beliefs about relationships. And we carry that with us. And what helps us in childhood to adapt and to survive doesn't necessarily help us create happy and healthy adult relationships. And that's where love traps come in. So whereas there are a lot of love stories that are totally fine, that, as long as you have someone who has a complementary love story, you can make it work. There are some love stories or aspects that will always result in dysfunction. And that's what I call love trap. And so some examples, for example, when you have a person who is very afraid of being abandoned, of being left alone, and that can obviously create conflict or problems with the partner. Imagine the partner has to go on work trips from time to time, and the person who's staying at home just can't deal with it. Or they get jealous as soon as the partner talks with someone else because they think, oh, I'm going to lose my partner. So they have a fear of being abandoned. Or another love trap might be that people feel very insecure about themselves. So they always feel like they're not enough for their partner, which couldn't. I have never seen or worked with a person who wasn't a wonderful person in their own right, but that's what they feel. And again, it's coming from earlier experiences. And so they feel like they're never enough for their partner, which then creates problems as well. And then often their insecurities always make them choose a partner who's very dominating, who picks on them, who tells them what to do. And then, of course, you have a relationship that doesn't work well. Or another love trap, just to give one last example, is one of a person who keeps sacrificing themselves. They learned early on that to be valued, to be loved, you have to give of yourself. You have to help. You have to be there for others. But once you do that to the extent that you give yourself up, nothing good can come of it. And so when you've got people in a relationship who just give, and serve their spouse and their children, but they don't ever, have any space for themselves, and they feel like they're living someone else's life, at some point it's just going to create this big explosion. And those are the love traps that I'm talking about.
So there's an old saying that if you find yourself in a hole, quit digging. Just quit digging. So say I've fallen into a love trap. Is there a ladder that will help me get out of that? Can you help someone come out of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely there is. And so you're totally right. It's like quit digging. The problem is that people aren't aware of that because, their conception of a relationship is as it is. Their self-concept is as it is. They don't know anything else. So they think this is the way the world works. So the first thing that we do is that we actually show them, there's something else. There are different conceptions of relationships. And this is what a good relationship looks like. And then we're digging deeper and looking at each person's love trap. Like, what is it that doesn't work? What is it that holds you back from finding the right partner or from making relationships work? And then we start changing that. And we start in the very beginning, because when you think about what makes you act, what makes you react, what makes you feel. Let's go back to that example of the spouse who did not go to the supermarket late at night, and he's coming home and there's nothing to eat in the house. What makes you react in a certain way, and what steers your emotion and everything, is your thinking. So you have a thought, oh, he doesn't care. He's just too lazy. He only thinks about himself. Or, he must have been really stressed. And it's those thoughts that really make you react in a certain way. So the first thing, once we know overall the picture of what is going on, we start to identify the thoughts, and psychologists call them automatic thoughts. They just slip in. You're in a situation and it just kind of like crosses your mind and you get upset or you get sad. You may not even really notice. And we work on those thoughts as well. Are those thoughts actually justified? Are those true? And can there be another explanation to what's going on? And so we work on those thoughts. And then in the second step, you can also work on, people's conception of a relationship, their beliefs. They usually have a lot of beliefs and rules. You should do this in a relationship. You should sacrifice yourself. You should always help your partner. Even if you're super tired, you need to be there. Don't take care of yourself because he will stop loving you or something like that. And so it's all those usually unconscious beliefs and rules and thoughts that we can change. And they will change how you look at potential partners. They will change how you interact with people. But of course, it's some work, it's like you're working on the foundational perceptions of, how you view the world, yourself, and relationships. But it can absolutely be done. Yeah, I've seen it so many times.
Don't you find like once you change, and I can say this for me, it's like once I catch one of those stories and then I'm going, oh, okay, I saw that one coming. It's almost like those Velcro thoughts. They come and they stick and you're going, I know the trigger for that. And I know that story's old, right?
Yeah.
And once you start letting them go, it starts to have this trickle or ripple effect on everything because you get faster at catching the thoughts. Like, okay, is that true, or am I making up a scary movie in my head? Am I creating my own scary movie about how bad this is going to go or something else? And to the point that once you catch them, it can start to be funny. You're just going, okay, that was hilarious. That didn't take me very long to get myself freaked out about something that it's not even true,
Yes. Yeah.
A little bit of, for me, a little self-acceptance has helped make this journey better, right? Instead of judging myself for how dumb I am or this, I should have known that. It's like, I didn't. And now I do, and now I get to practice being different in those situations. I get to choose to be different. But I never really thought about it from a love story angle. And I really like that you do that because, you just watch TV and they're sometimes it's not subtle, but sometimes it is. And then you talk to people and they say, well, it should be this way. And I'm thinking, that's who? Those are pretty high standards. And then you live long enough, you're thinking, tell me 2 people who are like that. Do you know any 2 people in the world that are like that? Well, no. And I'm thinking, stop looking, right? That's a story that someone made up. So I just think the work you're doing is so powerful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, I really, I believe so too. And it really, because it has the potential to make a lasting difference. So when you look at a lot of therapies, that try to help people, they're like, just soothing the symptoms. And what you really do when you go down and dig deeper and discover the love stories in any elements that don't serve you well, you're actually working on the root of your problems, and you can solve those problems. And as an additional benefit, the methods that we teach, they'll help you for the rest of your life in other situations as well. Because when don't we sometimes have, like those, as you said, those mind movies that create a horror movie where there actually isn't one, but we think there is.
Oh, I know. And it's nutso that we do that to ourselves.
Yes.
It's like, whoa, that was a weird ride I just took myself on. Stop it. Just take a breath. Literally take a breath. Have a drink of water. Slow down and evaluate. But, like you said earlier, you have to do the work, and you have to do the work so that you can re-cue your body, because those stories come in or the thoughts come in, and then your autonomic nervous system kicks in and your heart rate goes up and you get nervous, just like if you were watching a movie.
Yes.
And especially if you're highly sensitive or you are super empathetic, and even like you watch someone and it's it's fake. You're watching a story and they're in an operating room, and then all of a sudden your leg starts hurting. You're going, okay, I'm too identified with this. I need to stop. Mm-hmm. But that's the same thing on catching, like, what's playing on in my head here.
So. Yes. Yeah. And, actually early on what I do is I teach people to deal with their emotions. So we look at, what do they need? Some people get angry. Other people feel very sad or anxious, or a combination. And I teach them different techniques to deal with those emotions, because obviously they will come up. We're all humans. I have plenty of emotions as I go through the day. And so to just deal with those emotions, that you can then say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Is my evaluation of the situation correct? Or maybe isn't? And then to be able to continue. So that's important. That's one thing that I teach. And also what comes in sometimes, because we're also going back to childhood, sometimes it's important to forgive and to learn to forgive. Because how many of us haven't gotten in childhood what they really would have needed? And so, and then all those needs that weren't fulfilled, they're in that love story. We carry those with us. And so that super dominant father, the absent mother, or whatever went on, or, a hypercritical parent that made us feel like we're never good enough, we can move beyond this. But one good way of doing this, and everybody chooses for themselves, but one good way might be just forgiving. And so there's a whole path that people can take to forgiveness as well, because it's not always easy to forgive.
It is not. And sometimes forgiving yourself is harder.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes.
It's like you cover the whole gamut.
Well, there's so much in relationships. There's so much really involved. But it's true. I'm glad that you said that, because we don't always sometimes have a need to forgive ourselves, other people, but also ourselves. In the way we have acted towards partners we had in the past, towards children, towards our parents. There's so much. And yes, so indeed, I have worked with quite a few people actually who had a need or a desire to forgive themselves.
So, Karin, when we're looking at our relationship dynamics, you have an online quiz, right?
I do have. I actually have several online quizzes.
So share with our listening audience what you have that might, because I think there's people, I'm pretty confident there's people listening saying, wait, I need to know more, but I need to know more about me before I know more about anything. So talk a little bit about what you have.
So I have a lot of resources on my website that are free. You can go to lovemultiverse.com. That's love and then multiverse like universe. So lovemultiverse.com. And on the front page, there's already a quiz that you will find. It's on love traps. That gives you an idea of what love traps are, what your love trap might or might not be. And then you can also click on library. And if you go to library, you'll find a lot of different resources. I have more quizzes on love stories, on intimacy, passion, and commitment. If you want to find out more about that, I have some worksheets about different topics, and I have lots of articles. And I really hope that you'll browse and find something that is helpful for you. And if you'd like, you can also put yourself on our newsletter. There's a link for that. Or if you download something, you'll be asked for your email address anyway, because my first Love Traps course will launch within, like, hopefully in spring. I'm still working on it. And I would just love to see you there and, make a difference in your life. So definitely check it out and see if it's something for you or if it piques your interest.
That's a great set of resources, but also an invitation to go into your course. Can you say anything more about your course? I know it's not finished, but you have a concept for it and you're building it out. So you've got, where you're taking us. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm actually very excited about the course. So it will begin, it's likely going to be an 8-week course. And so we will begin at the beginning. I will introduce you to the core components of love. We'll do some work on, what is it you really desire? We'll talk about love stories, so that you can find out what is your love story, again, so that we create some kind of an image in our head. Where do we really want to go? What is it that we want? And I also talk a little bit about how the human mind works and how our thoughts really can, direct us in the right direction, but also in directions that aren't so helpful. And we'll then do some more diagnostic assessments to help you find out what is your love trap. And we'll go into your everyday life to figure out, well, how does that love trap really play out? In which situations do I observe it? Well, always every week comes with a personalized action plan. So from the beginning, we'll do action plans, and then we'll start working on specific problems or goals we have. We'll identify thoughts that don't serve us well, and then we'll really make plans how to change that. And it's an ongoing process, and every week we'll dig a little bit deeper, and we'll follow the same framework that just keeps expanding, because my goal is to put everybody in the position to help themselves, to kind of like keep working even after the course ends, but also to come back to that, or when new problems arise, to really go back and say, yes, I know how to do that. And the great thing about that course is also that I'll be personally there for everybody. So I'll restrict the number of participants, and I'll have, if people choose to do so, I'll have a personal meeting with everybody so I can find out about their challenges and how I can serve them best. And then I'll be in touch with people throughout the course to really see, how are they doing? Are they able to identify their challenges? Do they maybe need some more, tips or helpful questions for their particular situations, so that they really come out ahead? And how do they really, create their action plans? What is the best way of doing things? So there's really going to be this personalized element throughout the course, which I find exciting. It's also very fulfilling for me to personally work with.
Well, and it's unique. That's not always the case in courses, right? You don't necessarily get that close to the person who's leading the course.
Right.
Sometimes you do, but not always. And so you don't need to be in a relationship to be in this class, right? Or in the course.
No, absolutely not. That's a good question, actually, because a lot of people who are caught in a love trap, they don't have a partner or they're currently dating. But it's really also about not being able to find a partner who's a good fit. So we often have this image of the perfect partner in our head, and we go for the same kind of partner, and it doesn't really work. So, for example, I worked with one person who always went for like the dominant alpha male, and it never worked out. And she didn't even know why she always went for that kind of person. And so we did some work to figure out what's going on and what kind of a partner might actually be better suited for her. And as she was dating and meeting different people, it was different in the beginning because she decided, okay, I'm going to give someone a chance whom I wouldn't have given a chance before, just to see if that doesn't lead to a better relationship. And so it took some getting used to, but she did find someone who was completely different from the people she had dated before, and they're now married and have children. So,
testament to doing the work.
Yes, that's right. So it's just as much for the people, and I expect most people to be just individuals and not couples, but couples are welcome too.
I just wanted to ask that because I know if I were thinking about it, that would be a question I would have. It's like, wait,
Yes.
do we need to come as a couple? Could one person come? Does it even matter if you're in a relationship or not? So thank you for clarifying that. So Karin, we have all your contact information, so we'll put those in the show notes. So I know you told people how to get to your website and all that. We'll have that in the show notes, folks. So don't worry. But I would think, we're not quite at Valentine's Day. This will come out after that, but it will probably come out before it's time to sign up for Karin's course. So if that's something that you're interested in, do it. Go ahead and do it. 8 weeks goes by in a flash, and just think about the summer you could be going into. Just in a whole different headspace and relationship space, whether or not you're in a current relationship or not. And Karin, I want to leave you with the last word. What words of wisdom do you want to leave our audience with today?
I would really like to tell you that I believe in you and that you can create great, satisfying, and fulfilling relationships and stable relationships, no matter where you're coming from and what your situation is. And I really believe in you. And I want to encourage you to really do the work, be that with me or just be, on your own, to not even give up on yourself if things haven't gone well, and work on creating that life and those relationships that you really cherish and that you want, because I've never met a person who wasn't able to create a fulfilling relationship. And I know it's possible for you. Remember, I've got a lot of free resources on my website. Make use of them and create a happy life for you. That would be the biggest gift for me if any of the resources that I've created would be helpful to you in creating a better life.
So there you have it, No Labels, No Limits podcast listeners. Thank you to Dr. Karin for this great interview. I'm inspired by the work you're doing, and we will see the rest of the audience back next week.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic business coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. Please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Till next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.